Hey everybody, it's Adam, and I just wanted to tell you today a little bit more about the stories of the first two teachers that taught at Tree of Life and how they got here. The first one I want to tell you about is Pam Novak. I love it. We didn't get a lot of applications. If you can imagine a startup missional school in the inner city, probably not going to be a real amazing high-paying gig. I think we got maybe 7 applications, and one of them was Pam. And you know what? On paper, she was the worst looking applicant. She had all kinds of jobs, and I almost put her application, I almost tossed it out. I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to call her, but I got a little nudge from the Lord. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so one day I decided to call her. And I'm actually calling her in Canada. I said, hey, introduce myself. And Pam said, hey, Pam, how are you doing today? And she's like, oh, I'm pretty sore. And then I'm thinking to myself, she's, how old is she? I mean, it's not a great way to intro yourself as a candidate for little kids or anything. And I said, oh, well, how come? And Pam proceeds to tell me she's actually teaching at a middle school. And she's like, well, I was out at noon hour playing rugby with the kids, and one of them clipped me pretty good. And then I'm like, whoa, okay, she's tough as nails. This is a great story. And so we talked a little bit more, and I even threw out to her, I'm like, look, I just so you know, we're hoping to pay you $25,000 for the year, no benefits. And just to be clear, right now, we have no money. And she's like, oh, that's okay. The Lord will figure it out. And I'm like, okay, well, she's as nuts as I am at this point. All right, maybe she'll be a good candidate. Long story short, well, we actually had her come in for an interview. When she came in for an interview, this was crazy because we were doing it at Vanguard Church. It was a summer day. I actually rode my bicycle over there. I'm in my shorts and t-shirt. And I think Nate showed up. I think he had sweatpants on and a hoodie and everything. And here comes Pam, God bless her, in like a nice business suit. And she had to be walking in thinking like, who are these schlubs? Anyway, but she handled herself so well, and she started to interview, and we got to hear more of her story. And wow, what a story. She is actually an Ojibwe First Nation, Big Grassy River, from up near the Winnipeg area. And she actually explained how she grew up homeless for the first 8-9 years of her life, never knew God, was in a Christian school at one point and rejected God, and just crazy stories. At 20, she had a child, and she was a backup singer for a heavy metal band. We're like, wow, who is this woman? This is wild. But then she said, honestly, I just came to the Lord like 4 years ago. I was actually, and I think she was out late night partying in like downtown Minneapolis, and she was just feeling lost and confused, wandering around. And she said she actually stumbled up to some church at night, and the doors happened to be open, and she walked to the front of the church and got down on her knees, and she's like, I can't do this anymore. I give up. And surrendered her life to the Lord. And we're like, this is like some kind of movie. And so we were just like, whoa, what a story. And then she told later about how some of her jobs, she used to work at a group home or something, and she told about how one time she got stabbed, and another time there was this huge 300-pound patient that knocked her over and sat on her for 3 hours. It was 3 hours before someone came to rescue her. Needless to say, Pam was the first teacher that we hired at Tree of Life, and she was going to be our pre-K, kindergarten, first grade teacher. And we were like, wow, you can't make this stuff up. So when Pam came into the classroom, she was absolutely amazing. We actually had 9 little ones here no joke, at these tables here, the same seats. It hasn't changed in over a decade. But Pam actually ended up moving to Grand Rapids where her husband was working. She would actually commute 32 hours from Canada to Grand Rapids to see her husband every 6 weeks. Crazy. So she was really excited to be living with her husband now here in Grand Rapids. But man, you want to talk about hardcore love and dedication to these kids and helping each. She was so good. She was so dependable. She would teach them the Bible stories. These kids loved her so much. They were so excited to be here and to learn with her every day. And Pam was with us for 4 years, and it was so amazing to watch each one of those kids grow spiritually, academically, socially, emotionally. It was just so abundantly clear. And to be in a situation where you're building everything from the ground up. She brought so many gifts and talents to structure the curriculum. And not only that, but she would also help the families, just like we all did. She would go to their houses and do home visits and make sure they're getting food, clothes, or anything else. And Pam was just absolutely stunning. The next teacher that we hired, Jess Concannon, or Jess Ackmoody now, she actually applied. She was living on the east side of the state. When I got to know her, I said some of the same things, we hope to pay you this much. Right now, we don't have any money. She's like, oh, well, the Lord will figure it out. And I'm just thinking, these people are nuts. Come to find out, at a very young age, she had been around the world, 26 different countries. She had her own photography business. And she went into education, and she didn't come to the Lord till she was like a teenager. She didn't grow up in a Christian home, but she came to the Lord. And in like 2007, the Lord actually spoke to her and said, you're going to help start a Christian school in the inner city. But she was like, what? I got nothing. I don't know what you're going to do. And so for years, this went on with her too. And when she told us that, we're like, wow, that's pretty serious. We were amazed by her story. And I remember when we got to interviews, when we got to the interview night, she actually was doing mission works in India at the time. So we're doing a Skype call in the middle of the night. She had to get up and interview. I mean, Skype interviews, you know how those are anyway. And then let alone across the other side of the world, middle of the night. And we'll just say that maybe she didn't interview real well. We also had another candidate that we were really interested in, and the board was kind of split 50-50, like who are we going to hire? But then it was maybe a few days later at our church, at Vanguard Church, which was meeting in the old Ealing Brothers building over there. We'll show that sometime. They were actually doing these 5 a.m. prayer meetings. And so I would go to one of those like once a week and learned a whole new level of praying with the Lord and being intimate with Jesus. And one morning I was there after the interviews. I was actually just picturing myself resting on Abba Father's, chest. And I think I was just just praying over him, I just want to hear your heartbeat. And what was really cool is I wasn't praying lists or requests or anything. I was just spending time with the Lord. And somewhere, I don't know how long or whatever, in the middle of it, all of a sudden, he whispers in my head, Jessica. And it threw me. I was like, whoa. Again, it was like, what? Anybody else here? No, okay, that was just for me. Okay. And I heard that, and I was like, wow, Jessica. And I knew right then, I'm like, that's who he's calling. But what's crazy is before then, Jessica was like, I know I didn't interview well. I really don't think I'm going to get the job. But Lord, you're going to have to make it plain to him that I'm the one who's supposed to get it. Of course, we didn't know that until later and afterwards. But once I brought that, I said, look, I called the board and I said, this is what I've heard. And I think she's the one. I'm like, okay. And then she shared that story with me afterwards. And we're like, okay, Lord, yep, we're barking up the right tree. And so then Jessica was going to do 2nd and 3rd grade. And so now we've actually got 2 teachers who are ready to come and teach at Tree of Life. And man, when Jessica came in, she brought so much as far as like faith formation in these young students. And she had so much fire for the Lord and just getting them to realize who Jesus is and who Jesus identifies them to be. And not only that, she was so creative with curriculum and structure and getting resources and field trips. The kids would go all kinds of places. And she just had such a phenomenal educational mind and love for the kids and love for learning. And every day you saw these kids just growing by leaps and bounds. And there was just no question that Jess is exactly who these kids needed for the next 4 years.